Hey there, grade 5, this is Mr. B, and I'm just making a short version of this lesson so that you don't have to watch as long of a video as I made for last year. So yesterday, in the video you watched, you learned a bit about place value, which we already have covered a few times in the year, right? So I'll just quickly go over this again, right? So you have a number, you have 1, right? We know ones, we've used those little 1 blocks, and we know that it takes 10 of those 1 blocks to equal 1 10 block, right? Where it's all chopped up into 10. And we know that it takes 10 of these 10 blocks, right, to make one of the 100 blocks, right? Where you have 100 little things and it's a big square. It was orange this year. And then you have 10 of these and you get 1,000 blocks, which I'm not going to have enough space to draw here, but you know, it's a 3-dimensional block, right? With lots of pieces on all sides, right? And tons of little squares. So that it makes 1,000 block. And it's right. This is how we do it in math, right? So if you have 1 times 10 is equal to 10, right? And then what happens is instead of just using the first row, we also use the second row, right? We put the digit here, right? 9 is the max amount of anything you can have in a row, right? 9. If you add 1 more to it, you're going to get 10, right? So the ones column now resets back to 0 and you move it over into the tens column. The same is true when you're at 90. If you have 90 and you add 1 more into the tens column, right? What happens? Well, you get 100, right? And it goes over into the next block. So, right, it takes 10 ones to make 1 10, and it takes 10 tens to make 1 100. And just the same thing happens behind the decimal point, right? So we have been dealing with a decimal point, and we have these things called tenths, right? Which we have been saying is equal to 1/10 of a whole, right? So this is the decimal way of writing it, just so we're using regular numbers. And right, we know that to make a whole here in a fraction, we'd have to have 10 tenths. So if you added, and to do that, right, we would have to add 9 more tenths. So if you added 9 more tenths here, what would you get? Well, you would get a 0 here, and you'd put a 1 up there, right? And you'd get this, and you'd keep the decimal, and this would just be 1, right? So after you make 10 tenths makes 1 whole. And the same thing happens with 100ths, right? 100ths, you need 10 of these to make 1/10, right? So when you have 10 100ths, this is equal to 1/10, right? And the way we can figure this out is you can get these to have like denominators, right? What would it take? You would have to times this by 10. Let's just get rid of this line here. And you'd have to times this by 10 as well, and you'd get an equivalent fraction, which would be 10 100ths. And you can see these are equal then as fractions. And the way we show this with decimals, right, is 1 100th is shown like this, right? 0 0 1. So we're further back. If you look, we're now a whole extra row back. So this is what we call the 100ths area. Oh, sorry, my little writing. 100ths, and this is where you have the tenths. It's really hard to make the little tiny things, but yeah, you have the tenths there, and so on. And now, and you need 10 of these, right? You add an extra 9. So if you add 0.09, so 9 more hundredths, you'll get what? And let's just for a moment get rid of some of this stuff. What will you get? Well, you'll get 0 here, and you'll have to carry it over into the tenths column, which means you'll get this, right? 0.0. And this is like 10 hundredths, or what we can say is it's 1 tenth, right? 1/10, because 1/10 is also like written like this, right? Without showing the zero. Technically, you can imagine the zeros there, but you don't need to write it because you're not getting any information from that, right? It's just an empty space holder. In this case, it's empty. There's nothing there. So now we have to look one more step. Today we're learning about thousandths. So if you need 10 100ths to make 1/10, you need 10 thousandths to make 1/100. So a thousandth, so if we have a number like this, 5, 7, 3, this is the tenths, this is the 100ths, right? 100ths, tenths, right? These are the tenths. So you have 5 tenths, you have 7 100ths, and you have 3 1,000ths, right? So that is the one further back, right? Just like you go bigger and bigger this way, you get smaller and smaller when you're going this way. And so this one, 3, you need 10 times the amount of thousandths to make 100th, right? And it's the same thing again, not to beat a dead horse, but we'll just check it out. 0, 0, 1, right? We add 10, or we get this to be 10 of these, right? So we're adding 10 in this column. We're going to try and make 10 in this column. What happens again is you go over, right? So we get a 0 here. We're going to put a 1 here, and then ultimately we get 1, and it's 0.01. So now you have 1 in the hundredths column, right? When you have 10 together in the thousandths, that makes 1/100th, right? So the way we can look at this is like this, right? So you have 1/1000th. You require 10 of these to make 1/100th, and it takes 10 of those to make 1/10th, and it takes 10 of those to make 1, and it takes 10 of these equals 10 times, right? So we're always moving forward, right? You're getting bigger and bigger this way, right? So when we're ordering this, we have to bear in mind, right, that thousandths are the smallest. The further back you move in the place values, the smaller they get. So if you have 6 over 1,000 versus 6 over 100, you're going to know that this one is bigger simply because the denominator, right, is bigger. So yeah, this shows you this one's bigger, or is smaller, right? Because the bigger the denominator, rather, the more pieces it's chopped up into. And so yeah, this is smaller. Each individual piece is smaller. So here we have 6 pieces of 100, and here we have 6 pieces of 1,000. So, right, and then the same when we're looking at this in decimals, you have 0.006 versus 0.06. One thing always to think about is that if you're dealing with just decimals, you're going to have 3 zeros here and 3 zeros here, 2 zeros here and 2 zeros here. Another way to think about it, if you do actually have whole numbers as well, right? So if it's 1.006, right? This is 1,000th because, yeah, you go tenths, hundredths, thousandths, right? You just kind of have to remember that, right? So just as a recap, right, you need 10 1,000ths to make 1/10. As soon as you have 9, right, 9 thousandths, and you add one more thousandth, you get 0.01. You get 100th, right? It goes over and goes to the next place value. And yeah, when we're comparing, it's really important because you're going to have a page of comparison to first look at the denominator, and then also, right, sometimes you have to do some conversion. So 63 100ths versus 6 tenths. The way you can tell that this one is actually bigger is by making an equivalent fraction, right? So what would this be in just decimals? Or what would this be first? So this would be, you'd have to times it by 10 to make it equivalent, times it by 10. So it'd be 160, or 60 over 100. Now, how would we turn this into a decimal? Well, you're going to go 0, 0. And then what you're going to do is if you have 63 out of 100, you just put the 6 and then the 3, right? If you have only, let's just say, 3 out of 100, you're going to put 0.03, right? As you get tens in this one, you're going to put them in there. The same thing applies for 1,000ths, right? So if you have, let's just say 703 1,000ths, you're going to go 0 point, and then you're going to kind of add in this. Once you put the 0 in, you put the point, you're going to go 703, right? And if you had 32 1,000ths, right, what you're going to do is you're going to go 0.032, right? Whenever you have 1,000th, you're going to be filling in 3 spots, right? You're going to need to fill in 3 spots. When you have 100ths, you're going to be filling in 2 spots. And when you have tenths, right, so let's just say you have 1 over 10, you're going to be filling in just 1 spot, right? There's just 1 spot to fill in behind the decimal point. Anyways, I hope this helps. I hope you can see how you'd have to compare things. Oh, this should be 1,000ths, right? So three spots here, 1 spot with this, and if it's 100 rather, it's 2 spots, right? So yeah, right, 3 spots, 3 zeros, 3 spots, 2 zeros, 2 spots, 1 0, 1 spot. Yeah, I hope this helps. I'm going to include the other videos just in case you need more. I just wanted to keep this as brief as possible so that you don't get overwhelmed. Anyways, ciao.